So a consuming application now is able to discover that we expose our data sets. They can discover what resource kinds and what attributes of resource kinds we expose. They can request information and return that in a useful format that they can easily consume. So the next thing that a consuming application is going to want to do with our data is to update it. Okay, so implementing a put method is very similar to our get methods. So again, there is an attribute and it's called put request target. And here I'm going to pass in again the same trading accounts path. You could use the same method to handle everything to do with one particular type if you prefer. I personally like to split them out by its actual verb, whether it's get, put, post, delete, so on and so forth. So here we'll just call this put request. Put trading account, we'll call it. Again, the actual name doesn't matter. It's the attribute which is the important thing. Now, one of the key things about this is, with it being an update, the consuming application will be sending us some information. So what they'll actually be giving us is an instance of a trading account feed entry, the exact same class that we created before. The Sage Integration Framework will handle the serialization. The consuming application will simply send it as XML. The SIF will then turn that XML back into an object that we understand here, in this case a trading account feed entry. So what will be passed into this method automatically for us is an instance of a trading account feed entry. So we'll just call that account. So all we really need to do with that is to persist it. So just going to do a very quick test here and just make sure that trading account actually does exist in our collection. Now again, I'm going to go off to the static data that I'm holding here, but you would obviously be going off to your object model or loading something from your database to ensure that it exists, and that's where you would apply the update. So in example adapter customers, we'll just make sure that it contains the key and it's keyed on the UUID, universally unique identifier, which will be a property of the account which was passed into us. So what we're saying is, if it doesn't contain that, then we don't know what this account is. It can't be an update because that customer doesn't exist. So what we'll do here is to actually generate some diagnosis information for the calling application. So they've done something incorrect, essentially. They've given us asked us to update something which doesn't exist. Now the way that we can transmit information back to a calling application is through a diagnosis, and that's again quite simple using the SIF. So all we do is we'll throw a new diagnosis exception, and that's in the Sage Common Syndication namespace. So I'll just import that namespace. There's a number of overloads in here. I'm just going to use one of the more simple ones. So we're going to say its severity is error. You can have all sorts of information that you might want to pass back to it. Some of them are fatal, some of them aren't. In this particular example, it is. I'm just going to say it's a fatal error, and we'll just give it a bit of text to the user. Again, you might want to localize this. So we'll just say requested. Record, if I could type, does not exist. And we'll give it a diagnosis code of application diagnosis. So that's enough information to send back to the calling application. We could give it a lot more information, error codes, HTTP codes as well, but for demo purposes, that's enough information to be sending back. So, assuming that we did find it, what we're going to do here is we're going to take this trading account and we need to turn it into one of our own internal business objects, because that's how we're going to persist it internally. So for that, we'll just take our we'll create a new instance of a customer. We'll call it all customer, new customer, and we'll pass into that the account that was given to us. So all we're using is the constructor that we created before, which takes an instance of a trading account and does the mapping back to the customer. And then now that we've got that customer, we can persist that. So obviously in your own object model, you might have any number of ways of doing so. You might have a save method on the customer, for example. Here we've just got our static collection. So all we're going to do is, in our example adapter, in our customers collection, we're going to get the appropriate record, and we're going to set it to our customer. So literally all we've done is we've gone off to in the collection. We know that this exists because this would have thrown an exception if it didn't, and we're going to stash that customer. We're going to overwrite what's currently in the customer record with this new one. In a real world scenario, you'd probably want to do some sort of merging and sort of conflict resolution and the like. Here we're just going with the sledgehammer approach of replacing the entire customer. So that's it. That's the data persisted. But one of the interesting things about updating and as well as creating new data is that when we've got that instance of the trading account from the calling application, they might not have provided every bit of data that we want, or they might or we might have some data that we should be defaulting to something different, and we need to communicate back to the customer details of the record that we've created. And the way that we do that is to actually return an instance of the newly created trading account. So all we'll do for that is we're going to get a hold of the request object. So the request again is another helper class in the Sage Integration Framework, and it's in the Sage Integration Messaging namespace. And from that, if we just get the current request, and then what you'll see here is this is exactly the same implemented the exact same interface that request interface that we were dealing with in the get request. So we can see in here it has a response, and here we want to set the feed entry because we're dealing with a single instance of a feed entry here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to set that to a new trading account feed entry, and I'm going to pass in customer. So all I'm doing is I'm taking that customer that we've serialized and potentially may have changed some properties on it. Obviously we aren't here, but your business rules that you have in your business layer might have updated that in any way. If it was a creation, it might have been the account open date, might have been set to today's date, for example. So all we're doing is returning that customer converted back to a trading account feed entry. So that's all we need to do in terms of supporting an update request. So all I'll quickly do here is create a new project because we need something to actually drive this. I'm just going to create a quick console project, and I'm just going to call it update account. And in here I'm just going to bring in again some pre-canned code. Now this is very specifically to do with consuming applications. there's another video available on consumers which will go into this sort of thing in a lot more depth. Here I'm just going to use it literally as a consumer. I'm not going to go into the detail of what the code's doing here, other than it's asking for trading account, getting the first trading account of the list, and then updating the name. I'll just run it in a second. I'll show you. I do need to bring in a reference to the SIF. So again, it's that path program files sage assemblies SData, and in here I want to bring in syndication. It's a client application. We need the model and the utilities class. We also, actually, nearly forgot, we need to make a reference to our example adapter, because we are going to be using, as you can see here, the trading account feed entry class that we created before. So I'll just set that as the startup project, and we'll just run a build. Just make sure everything's okay. Okay, so build successful there, which is great. That's what we like. So we'll just run that. So what this is going to do is go off to the trading account feed. It's going to call essentially into that same get request handler that we created before. It's going to get us the list of customers, and in this case it's going to return us the first one, as you can see there, customer 0, and ask us for a new name. So all I'll do here is just say name has changed. So this is going to be the new name, and that's successfully updated. So that's actually been written back to the database, or in our case to the back to our static collection. So refreshing this page here now, we can see there that the customer name has changed, in fact, so we have actually persisted that bit of information. So what we've seen here is the ability to get information out and to update information back in there. We're not going to go into the creation and deletion in this particular demo, but they are exactly the same principles as the rest, as the others. Hopefully you found that useful. As I say, if you do have any questions, just pop them on the forum. We'll do our best to answer them there. Thanks for watching.